exactly what I am talking about, okay? I'm still trying to figure out intro music and just getting the feel of things here, but yeah, let's start with that one. Why not? So ultimately, what I wanted to do today on this little podcast, this is going to be like a little tidbit. It's not really, I don't have anything planned. I just kind of wanted to talk about stuff that I wanted to do with my little podcast, you know? But before I get into that, I kind of wanted to promote the other podcast that I'm in. The reason that I'm even doing this right now and have any motivation to do this right now is because of my obligation to do the other one. So my buddy and I have been trying to start a podcast for a long time. And, you know, we're all aware, painfully aware, that the last thing the world needs right now is another two white dudes who think they're hilarious podcast of two dudes trying to obviously monetize and just make a couple bucks to escape the fucking capitalist hellhole system that we live in. And either way, like, unless you're a Nepo baby or you have connections or you really, like, make a standout impression to the right people at the right place at the right time, success as far as, monetary success goes is fucking hard to come by. But sometimes, let's be honest here, there's so much fucking money that people just waste in this world, right? I'm not talking about no Doge, government, efficiency type, fraud, abuse type waste and spending. I'm talking about people literally just be spending money on the dumbest shit. They're just like eager to give away their money.
I'll be back in a flash with the cash.
It's like there are those rich people who are like, I'm going to hoard as much money as possible and be a cheapskate bastard and dress like a normal person and act like I'm not a billionaire so that people don't treat me like billionaire or want to steal all my money or fucking rob me or whatever. And then there are those rich people who are just like, yeah, I got this money, I'm going to spend it all. Those are mostly like inheritance, like trust fund kids or whatever, who just don't understand money. But anyway, let's not get into money too much. The whole idea is that we're obviously not going to be making any money anytime soon, so that's not the point. That's not the ambition or the key driving factor here. Ultimately, Jesus Christ. Ultimately, the driving factor here is to meet up, frankly, and hang out as buddies, because we're both in our 30s now, so we just like have stupid schedules, and he's got a wife and a kid and everything, so obviously he's 10 times busier and has more real life problems to deal with than I do. Not to diminish my own life or my own problems, but we just have different life paths and still try to find a way to meet up in the middle, which has been very difficult. We've been trying to be in bands together and stuff, and we've been trying to do a podcast together. We originally started with Chuff Chat, or I'm sorry, what's it called? Chat Sabbath. And it came from the Chuff Chat, as I mentioned earlier. It was an Instagram chat that me, my buddy, Connor, and our other friend, Galen, have been in on Instagram for ages, where we just send each other crazy shit and talk mad shit or politics or whatever, right? And Galen obviously moved to Gainesville, which makes it harder for us to meet up periodically because that's like 3 hours away from where we live. And so Connor and I were like, well, let's start a podcast. We got all this podcast equipment and blah, blah, blah in the storage unit that we, band practice at. So let's do something that we both love, which is Black Sabbath. Because we were going through a huge guitar pedal, Black Sabbath, King Gizzard phase during the pandemic. So we're just like, we know a lot about Black Sabbath. Let's talk about Black Sabbath. And I guess we try to convince ourselves that, yeah, people are going to want to nobody fucking wants it. If you love Black Sabbath, you're going to seek out that content. And you really got to, like, really love them to actively want to seek out that content. Otherwise, you're not really going to fucking scroll on YouTube and be like, oh, two white dudes talking about Black Sabbath for 30 minutes to an hour. I definitely want to click on that, you know what I mean? So, it was something we were doing for a while. We had, like, a couple episodes recorded, but it just didn't really sit right with us, right? Like, it was too confining and too limiting and too niche of a topic, and so around that time I was starting to come up with my little idea of doing like so like if Pee Wee Herman had a fucking podcast but was also like woke, I don't know, and wanted to like do deep dives and lectures into specific concepts and topics and talk about really heady shit, but also talk about really mundane, stupid, nonsensical, memes, internet stuff, internet history. We could talk about fun stuff too, like art and music history and culture and different expressions and all that stuff. It was basically going to be a catch-all or an alternative ulterior outlet besides the main podcast that I was obliged to do with my homies. But now it's not like that at all. Obviously, we came up with the Chuff Chat Pod, which is just the ultimate incarnation insofar as we've, come up with these ideas for our podcast. And so far, we're just doing Chuff Chat Pod, putting a lot less pressure on it to be a specific thing and just have it be like a hangout session, right? Because a lot of the most successful, and at least in my opinion, the most fun podcasts are when you're, sitting there listening, maybe you have it on in the background or you're doing work or you're doing something. And it just sounds like you're hanging out with your friends, And I know a lot of people have those like parasocial relationships, or they'll put on a podcast to eat food to, or to, I don't know, to go on a run or go study. I don't know. You could do podcasts for many reasons. I do podcasts for many reasons. I go on walks for, first I walk my dog for about a half an hour, and then I drop them back off at home, give them a little treat, and then I'll go continue my walk, ideally at like midnight, which I know this is going to sound weird. I've been on like a vampire schedule recently where I'm up at like midnight, 2, 3, 4 in the morning going on like these 4 or 5 mile long walks. But it really gives me a lot of chance, and I enjoy them a lot because it gives me a chance to catch up on a lot of podcasts and to listen to things and to hyper focus specifically on a specific concept, because my ADHD is constantly pulling me in a million directions with distractions, as you can tell by the fact that I'm constantly going off the rails in different tangents here when I'm trying to describe the origins of this podcast that I'm doing with my buddy. So that being said, Kali B Podcast is its own little outlet, and it doesn't really have any structure, rhyme, or reason. Chuff Chat Podcast is a little bit more structured, and we plan to have segments, and it's going to be a lot more, we're going to put a lot more thought and energy and effort and money and all kinds of stuff into it to make it more of a thing, a collaborative experience, and also just make it more interesting and fun for listeners, right? Because there's a dialogue rather than this podcast, which is just me talking. Now, I don't mind solo podcasts. Like, I listen to Andrew Huberman, who's, I just found out today, is kind of right-wing centrist kind of dork, but whatever. Like, as long as he's not like a Sam Harris type of neuroscientist who's like, yeah, but Islam is actually evil and they want you all dead, and it's an unbiased absolute evil in this world. I don't know exactly his rhetoric on it. I know he's like, oh, what can't be critical of Islam now? It's like, yeah, man, but you gotta be a little bit, you gotta read the room, like sign of the times type shit, show a little self-awareness. Anyway, to stop getting derailed here, I like Andrew Huberman because he gives me some insight as to how the brain works in ADHD. Okay, now let's reel it back even further. So we're going to Kali B Podcast. I also have fun things planned. I have segments and shows and different series and stuff, and I'll just give you an idea of what that's like. If you want to check out the Chuff Chat Pod and the stuff we're going to be doing in the future, you can follow us at Chuff Chat Pod on Instagram and on YouTube. And I will also plug that again at the end just as a reminder. But I just want to I have these notes about stuff that I want to do, and I'm not going to give the whole sauce away right now, but just to give you an idea of stuff that I wanted to do. So originally when I envisioned this podcast, it was going to start off with like a robotic female voice. I was going to give her a name too. It was going to be called like Lorelei or something. And I was going to refer to this like, you know how in podcasts they always have this like fact checker guy or this editor or producer guy in the background who the podcasters will refer to, but those people will like rarely ever pop on the show. Like with Stavi's World, you have what's his name? Shit, just giving myself away that I don't really watch that show that much. Bearded fella. He pops in. If you watch like H3 podcast, which I don't watch that shit anymore, but Dan would constantly pop in. But for, let's say for TrueAnon, for example, they have Young Chomsky, and he's just kind of like the research guy, the producer, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was going to come up with my own. That was just a fake guy that I refer to all the time called Reggie. Because I made a joke a couple years ago that just never left my mind, where I was like, I think I was streaming with someone on Twitch, and I kept referring to just some random dude named Reggie. I was like, yo, Reggie, run back the tape. Hey, Reggie, spin that shit, So I thought that was funny. I don't know. It's just kind of giving away a little inside joke there, but I think I'm probably going to do that. Something similar to that, where I refer to this ambiguous or just like non-existent person as if they're actually there in the room with me. And people be like, "What the fuck, is this guy schizophrenic?" No, I'm just trying to make things interesting. The last thing you want to do is listen to a podcast of some fucking dude talking about, my opinion about this is actually that everyone's wrong and dumb and stupid, and I'll tell you why. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am going to be like that, but it's, I'm a pretty open-minded dude. And I'm pretty self-critical in a way that isn't detrimental. It's constructive, hopefully, I believe. But yeah, I want to do a little intro spiel. I wanted to do stuff where I give you a little words of encouragement, or give you a little peek into on this day in history, on this date, blah, blah, blah. Maybe do a little trivia questions or something like that for people to give me at the end of the show, or to comment, or something I can address in the next show. And this is going to sound a little corny, but I was going to do a little words of affirmation, gratitude, self confirmation, encouragement, that kind of stuff. Because ultimately, it's like you do need a reminder once in a while. You need a reminder to check up on yourself, and to be kind to yourself, and to be patient and forgiving, and to take care of yourself. And it's, people always say that kind of stuff, like treat yourself, take care of yourself. Health is wealth. Well-being matters, focus on your mental health, take a mental health day, all that stuff. But it's like, you got to give yourself some credit, and I'm not going to sit here and read the whole spiel. You know what, I think I'll just read the one that I have written right now, because I want to make them different. Maybe not every episode, but every other episode or so, just to have like a refreshed message. So I'm just not repeating the same fucking shit over and over and over and over again. But I'll give you an idea of what kind of peer into the mind, the inside of Kali B for a second, to just give you an idea of what kind of words of affirmation I wanted to express to people, and like the kind of direction I wanted people to go in. Not because I want them to go in a specific direction, but I believe that it's beneficial for people to be reminded to take care of themselves once in a while. I don't ever want to be a person that dictates or forces you or tells you what to think or what to feel or how to do anything in your life. I just want to basically bring it up, that it exists, tell you what my experience with it is like. And it may seem a little coercive or influential. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not telling you what to do, but this is what I did, and I thought it was great. Ultimately, I'm just bringing things up. You can make your own decisions on whether you want to take that advice or not. Nobody's forcing you. I don't want to force you. I'm not going to shame you or guilt you. I know what that's like. That shit sucks. I don't like guilt trips. And I shame myself enough as it is to want to make other people feel bad. So let's go into the words of encouragement and self-affirmations for this, the first spiel that I wanted to really get into. So it's kind of, it's simple. It's a lot of platitudes. It's a lot of me saying a lot without actually saying anything. And some of them feel like thought-terminating cliches. Where it's like, you say these little platitudes like, it is what it is, and it doesn't really beckon any further thought. But ultimately, there is some meaning that you can derive from it, even if it seems meaningless. My point is that just as you can write it off as being just drivel and mundane nonsense that I'm saying, just because it's like I'm regurgitating things that are self-help shit to make me feel better, you can be dismissive all you want. And conversely, you can actually read into to a fault. You can read too much into what I'm saying and find some meaning. You can derive meaning from anywhere, really. And you can derive meaningless from anywhere just as easily, right? So anyway, let's read into the speech. So I say here, give yourself some credit. Strive to be better and be healthy. Already, let me interrupt myself. Just the first sentence, strive to be better and be healthy. That is kind of me just telling you this ambiguous something like, yeah, be better and healthy. I want to be better and healthy. It's like, yeah, what does being better mean? What does being healthy mean? We can get into that later, but let me continue. Mental health is important too. I haven't vetted this in a while, so I don't know if I'm about to embarrass myself, but here we go. Mental health is important too. Emotions are fleeting and they don't make you weak. If anything, they make you more human. And the truth of life is that it too is fleeting, and this life is the only one you know you've got. So make the most of it. Be good to others without expecting nice things in return. Take care of yourself and take care of others. Oh, there's a text message. We all have to take care of each other. Helping each other helps you too, and you live longer. Fuck, I don't even know. This may have been in some sort of like trance stupor that I was in. Even the nasties and a-holes you just can't stand. A better version of you that dreams of a better version of the world starts only with you. Only you can take those steps to make the right decisions to set up a brighter future for yourself. In a way, that's me saying that only you can make this, the decision to take those steps to work on improving your life and condition before you can even consider wanting to make your immediate community or society or the world or whatever the case is a better place. And that kind of makes me think of, everybody, there's a Buddhist parable, I guess, of this monk coming into a university, and he walks in quietly and he writes on the board, everybody wants to save the world, but nobody wants to help mom do the dishes. Everybody's laughing, snickering, this and that. It's like, it's true. And he goes on to explain that everybody has these great ambitions and desires to save the world and want to be praised for that and to, do good things and to, feel good for that. But, rarely is it that we're ever going to find ourselves running into a burning orphanage and saving a baby. But more often than not, we're going to find ourselves making an impact on somebody's life that is changing the world for that person, right? And if you can't bring yourself to do simple, mundane tasks to help out in your absolute immediate situation, for example, helping mom to do the dishes, then how the fuck can you try to convince yourself without delusion that that any efforts that you take in this life are going to be to help the world, right? So ultimately, you can't pass up the little things. The little things are just as important, especially even on the way or as a first step to making your immediate community and or society and or country or world the better place, right? It all starts with the mundane things, and it all starts with addressing your mental health. This isn't what I wrote, but this is just kind of my justification for this bullshit that I wrote. But let me finish before I continue picking it apart. Only you can take those steps to make the right decisions, to set up a brighter future for yourself. It all starts with the right dream, a dream that gives you life instead of sucking it away. A dream that you can control and not lose control of. A dream of a better you and a better future is not without failure. Embrace the failure, take risks, follow your fear to its logical extreme, and know the mind conquers fear. Know that mind conquers fear. Fear is the mind killer, but mind is the fear killer. So, I ended up doing what I was making fun of before I started reading this, where it's like, you're just saying a bunch of platitudes, you're just saying a bunch of like self-help, thoughtless kind of cliches, and just saying all this shit that really doesn't evoke a lot of introspection in people, unless, you do the neurotic shit that I'm doing right now, which is to break apart every fucking thing that I was saying and explain it in detail. That's ADHD for you, though. But let's do that. Let me break it down just for a second. So what I mean by being better and being healthy is, like I was saying earlier, it's to recognize that you're in a position in life where you're not where you want to be, or you don't like yourself, or you don't like, the relationship you're in, or the job that you have. So telling somebody to strive to be better and to be healthy is goofy. Like, on the surface level, yeah, everybody should want to be a better person and should want to focus on their health. But how do you become a better person without obviously recognizing the uncomfortable or undesirable conditions that you're in? Now, the thing is, with a lot of people, they will fixate on that, and I'm no different. I'm guilty of fixating on the undesirable qualities and the complaints, and just it's easier to complain, it's easier to throw a fit and to get frustrated and to use your stress and worry and anxiety as an excuse to go buy a bottle of booze and fucking drown your sorrows away until the next day, where you reset and you wait for the inevitable collapse of mental well-being, and then you're like, you just find yourself in this vicious cycle. And for me, it was like, I'm tired, I'm so fed up of this. I recognize the patterns, I recognize the cycle, I recognize that I'm bypassing making the right choices by just choosing the easy way out anyway, right? And so that's why I kind of came up with the philosophy a long time ago called know better, do better, be better. And so that way, it's like, if you go into detail with that philosophy, it on the surface level, of course, each one sounds simple as hell, and it sounds stupid almost to just an average person, right? Like, you should strive to know better. What does that mean? Oh, well, you just say it like that. It means anything to anybody and also means nothing. What do you mean? What I mean by that is you should strive to know better in the sense that you should know yourself better. You should know what you like and dislike, and you should know right from wrong. You should learn about morality and ethics, and you should know better. You should know better about the world that you live in. You should know better about yourself, about the mind, the body, everything, how it works. You should know better, and how, but, that kind of skips an important step here, is that you need to learn how to learn. You need to learn how to think, learn how to learn better, right? Have critical thinking skills, be self-critical, but not to a fault where you're constantly fixating on your negative qualities. Introspect, but not to the point where you isolate and are introverted and don't ever go out in the world and experience the world. You learn. You have to learn from yourself. You have to learn. And that, for me, I think that came from a place of like feeling abandoned and neglected and not having the right guidance. So I was desperate to find the most rational, reasonable ways to understand how to think critically and how to scrutinize my own mind and my own thoughts and my own feelings all the time. That's probably a form of neuroses. It's probably a form of dysfunctional neglect through childhood. It's probably a function of my ADHD in general. But that was just a compulsion I felt to be smarter. Maybe it was an insecurity of feeling stupid, that I wanted to be more intelligent, that I wanted to be more aware, that I wanted to be wiser. So I guess that ambition to want to be open-minded and learn better is what is the catalyst for this philosophy, right? So then when you have that attitude and you're like, okay, I want to learn and grow and be better and learn from my mistakes. So then you learn and you experience the world and you try to, weigh right from wrong and good from bad and left, right, middle, all of it. You do the dialectical thinking where you take a concept and you find its contradiction in the concept, and then you find a resolution that is a combination of both the concept and the contradiction of the concept to create something closer to the truth, right? And so that is knowing better. That synthesis of the truth is knowing better. It's like, okay, I've weighed both options, and I have the total picture of both sides now. Now I can make a better informed decision. So that's knowing better. You know better at that point. There's a gap after this that is really the hardest part for a person like ADHD with executive dysfunction like myself to overcome. And that is the second part of my philosophy, which is do better. Now let's break that down before we bridge the gap between know better and do better. What does do better mean? It literally means by way of action, you can make change in your life. And inaction is also a form of action. So choosing to do something or to change something in yourself, to make the active changes and, to stop with a negative habit or something that is perpetuating this discomfort or suffering in you. The Buddhists talk about this as well. Inaction is still action, right? Choosing not to do something or choosing the distraction. And a person like myself with ADHD, my brain is seeking those distractions, and I would think that it was a personality fault in myself instead of like the way my brain is wired to constantly seek distractions and patterns and dopamine elsewhere. But I would feel tremendous guilt and self-consciousness and shame about aversive activities where I would avoid doing what I'm supposed to do, right? And I would also put a lot of pressure on myself that I'm supposed to do this. And this goes into the conversation about should, like you should do this. And so that just like has this air of shame and guilt that follows it no matter what. Like I should be doing something better, right? And this also kind of harkens to the capitalist society that we live in, where it's like you have to be productive and you have to be motivated and constantly moving and constantly hustling. And if not, then you're a dead fish in the water and you're in the way, and get the fuck out of the way. Like if you're just a waste of time and space, and if you're not actively working on something or working at work or generating capital, then what is your value? You're useless type shit, right? That's why that's why it's so easy to demonize and to dehumanize homeless people, right? Especially through the lens of capitalist productivity and this just feverish, neurotic desire to constantly stay productive, right? And then there's a resistance to that. There's like a backlash to the constant need for productivity. If you don't have utter obligations like having kids and family to take care of, so that you have absolutely no free time. If you do have free time, sometimes that backlash and resistance to the constant push for productivity is to take those relaxation days and those fuck off days and the mindless zombie days where you're just like, I'm not doing shit today. I'm treating myself. It's a mental health day, blah, blah, blah. That's just a symptom of society. That's a symptom of capitalism in a nutshell. But let's just go back to regular hangups that are outside of capitalism, outside of ADHD, and let's just point at somebody who's just kind of willfully being ignorant or lazy. This is where we go back to bridging know better and do better. Real quick before we do that, I also wanted to point out that with myself having ADHD, I've been so self-aware of it and self-critical and guilty and shameful about it that I have developed a way of going on tangents but putting a pin on a concept that I want to come back to and not losing my train of thought or forgetting at all what I was talking about. I still do. I still have brain fart moments. Like yesterday, I had a couple straight up, and obviously they were a little alcohol influenced, which makes it worse. You know, your center of judgment and your critical thinking and rationality skills and judgment are just all impaired. So that's why I don't beat myself up if I have a brain fart moment like that anymore. But I used to be very self-critical about it, and I developed an internal mechanism where I would literally, I call it put a pin in it. I would put a pin in something, and I would literally, figuratively, imagine me taking this concept, for example, bridging know better and do better, and I would put a pin in it so that I could go and ramble about do better, ADHD, capitalism, this and that. But that pin is still lingering in my mind, and I see it clear as day, so that I know that I have to wrap up what I'm talking about and get back to the point. So I put a pin in it, put a pinpoint in it. Anyway, let's go back to the point. So to bridge the difference between knowing better and doing better is basically that if you know better and you strive to do better, so these two would have to line up, then let's not skip ahead, but we'll go to the third one here, which is to be better. And this is a very, very tricky one, right? We can talk into the concept of being. This is going to get very Buddhist in a second, very existential, very much wow. Anyway, so if you know better about what's bothering you and your condition in life, the struggles that you have, the desires or undesirable states that you have, or things that are pulling you apart in every different direction, or afflictions that you have, such as ADHD, or externalities that affect you, such as capitalism, right? If you know better what is bothering you in society, or in your own personal life, or in your brain, or with your habits, you know better now, right? Let's say you know better. From there, you make the decision to form the do, which is the action, which can be a positive or negative change, which, let me remind you, positive change is just as stressful as negative change, right? So if we go through a negative change in our life, or, you know, we're uprooted and we have to go move at short notice, or we get evicted from our home, boom, it's crazy amounts of stress. But let's say you get a new job in a new city and you have to move, and you know what I mean? It's a good thing and you're going to get paid more money. Still quite stressful. So to make the decision to do better, right? We want to be authentic about our desires. Are you fed up with these bad habits? Are you fed up with the way things are in society? Are you fed up with, you know, going raw with ADHD and not having any control of it or anything like that? Or are you really motivated, and is this the right place and time for you to make that decision to do better, right? And doing better, really all that comes down to is being self-aware enough of these habits that you find yourself in, and just catching yourself in the moment. And then in that moment, attempting, and that's an important word there, attempting to alter course. The thing is, why I emphasize the word attempting is because you're not always going to do it immediately. It's not going to happen right away. You're not going to alter course or make that change immediately. Sometimes, you know, a person like myself, you know, I got to stop beating myself up about it. But I used to be like, I need like an existential event or a natural disaster to shake me up out of this, so that I can use that as like a milestone or a landmark to finally make the decision to put all of this suffering and desires in my past behind me to metamorphosize into this new being, this new version of myself that is changed positively. It's not that easy, you know. It's really difficult for a person to authentically make a grand decision that is a life-changing decision, that, you know. And that's why I always tell people, just make the attempt, you know, chip away at it every day, you know. It's going to affect you less if you are consistent with it. But it's not going to be an all or nothing type situation. Some days you'll make tremendous progress and breakthroughs, and you make a decision that will change your life, and you're like, wow, I should have done that ages ago. And sometimes it'll take you months to get there, to just trudge your way there slowly and slowly, to make habit altering decisions that eventually turn into more beneficial habits. Because that's what it is. You're altering a bad habit. You're not going to get rid of it. And the bad habit, the tendency for that bad habit is actually going to remain within you, because it's like engraved in you. It's like wired into your brain, your neurochemistry, to have those bad habits. Those bad habits as like a coping mechanism for, you know, or as just a dopamine seeking habit that you have, or just a mindless habit that you have. So those will always be there, but you can alter them to be more positive, more self-aware habits, right? So here's the formula, to go back to it, right? If you know better about your situation, or if you know better about X, and you try and strive to do better about X, then here's the thing. That a lot of people will think that, oh, that means that I'm on my way to being better. And in a sense, yes, and in a sense, no. But no, I'm not saying no, you're not going to be better in a contradictory or contrarian way. I'm saying no in a way that technically, if you know better and you're doing better, you already are better. So here's the contradiction in that. You don't feel better because you still have a lot to work on, right? Because you still have those bad habits that you have to still alter and change. Or maybe conversely, if you know better but don't do better, you're not going to feel better. You know, you're going to be stuck in your habits and addictions and coping mechanisms, and you're going to feel even worse because you know better, but you're not making those decisions to do better. It's almost like willful ignorance, but it's, you know, it's more complicated than that, obviously. But my point is that that's kind of a double-edged, that's the fork in the road right there. It's that if you, it reminds me of the Spaniards and the Catholics when they came to the Americas, and they were like, well, you're not going to, you know, all people who, know about heaven and Christ and all that stuff, if they believe in him, will go to heaven. And what about those who don't know about Jesus and blah, 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 and they've died without ever, you know, they're fine. They're going to limbo or purgatory or blah, blah, blah. You're not going to hell for that. And it's like, how would my ignorance of that, like, determine if I'm a good or bad person or worth salvation or not? It's, you know, that's the third tier, is that if you don't know better to do any better, then can somebody blame you, right? Like, if you're looking from a Catholic missionary perspective, it's like they don't know any better. They didn't know any better to do any better, to convert to Christianity or whatever, so you can't condemn them to hell, right? Because they're not evil and sinful, right? They're not being evil and sinful, and therefore judged to be, you know, going to hell, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's a loose metaphor, but yeah, I guess you kind of can pick up what I'm trying to say there. You pick up what I'm putting down. But then there's a middle tier, which is I know better. This obviously brings you to the most suffering. I know better, but I'm not making any decisions or trying to change or do better. So I'm going to be suffering no matter what. I'm not going to be better. I'm going to be worse. Or just remain as you are in your state of suffering, right? I don't think that it would be fair or to criticize somebody for being worse. So you know better, but you don't do any better, then you're trapped in your own hell, because you're like, I know better, that I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm doing it anyway, you know? Once you arrive to the end of that, which is I'm so fed up with knowing better but not doing better that I have to do better. Eventually, that's where I'm at right now. I've known better for so long, but I haven't been doing better, and therefore I would constantly find myself stuck and feel like I'm in the stage of arrested development, that I'm not improving in my life. But when I started to make those small decisions, it doesn't flood you. Like, there's not these feelings of satisfaction and like pride and accomplishment that flood you, and you just get this rush when you do the right thing, when you make the right choice, when you know better, and you, by virtue of knowing better, you do better. You're not going to feel amazing after the fact. It's always going to be in reflection much further down the line that you're like, yeah, I really fucking did that. That's kind of why when I was starting this little spiel, I started off with, you got to give yourself some credit. You got to give yourself some credit and to check up and to keep track of your ambitions to do better, because eventually you're going to be like, yeah, I've done the best that I can, and I feel like I'm a better person than I was, and I feel like just by maintaining this trajectory that I already am a good person, and that I already do deserve love. And I think that's the ultimate thing that people can come to the conclusion of. People are trying to mask and fit in this world and hide from each other and hide from pain and suffering, and ultimately it's that you just have to accept yourself and love yourself as you are, as, a person who's trying their very best to be a good person. And let's be honest here. If you're just an egomaniac and you think you're a good person automatically without ever having to do the work, or you think you're the hottest shit that ever existed, you are probably way far behind on people who are doing the development necessary to achieve that that illumination, which is that I've been through suffering and I've learned from my suffering. I've avoided making the decisions to alter my bad habits for so long that I'm fed up with it, and I'm going to make the decision to change for the better by doing the hardest things possible, which is to confront my bad habits directly and to alter them, whether by chipping away at it or making huge strides and breakthroughs. And ultimately, I'm not going to know that by virtue of making those efforts, I'm already being a better version of myself, until you have the time much later to reflect on yourself and say, yeah, I did it. I really fucking did it, all that shit. And it was very hard, and I'm not going to get credit from, cherubs and angels coming down from heaven to say, you did it, and, blow trumpets and drop confetti on me, and I'd be like, oh, wow, I did. I got the validation I needed externally. You need to validate yourself internally. This is where it's going to come from. You got to give yourself credit. You got to reflect and be like, yeah, I really did the hard things that took me years to finally muster up the courage to do. And sometimes it's not even courage. It's like I said, you're just so fed up with the bad habits and you're so self-aware and self-critical that you're like, instead of beating myself up and hating myself and continuing this cycle of suffering, I'm just going to try my very best to break the fuck out of it. And that's you doing better, You're aware of it. You're aware of the activity. I know better. And then you make an attempt to correct yourself in the moment that's doing better. Boom, you're already better than you were. And so the whole concept of being and Buddhism thing that I wanted to get into is that third option right there, be better. It was something I used to get caught up with all the time, is this idea of betterment, right? Of like being a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. And I think there's a lot of toxicity involved in that, ultimately, because it is a good thing to want to strive to be better, right? I feel like everything has tier levels of adaptability, not adaptability, but adeptness. I don't know the word for that, but what I mean is that you approach a concept with almost no knowledge. You're novice. It's a novel experience, and sometimes you have to come back to it multiple times from different levels of experience and different levels of understanding before you can really fully go through it. You know what I mean? Some people think that, I've been exposed to a concept, so I know it by heart. You don't. You trust me, you don't. So that's kind of what I'm talking about too, is that, on that surface level, when you're an ignorant, fresh, novel person, you're like, I want to be better. Cool, that's a great ambition. But what does that mean? And you don't really know what that means until you are putting in the experience and trying to find meaning in what does being better mean to you. In the intermediate level, it means like, being better is, striving to correct my, toxic habits and behaviors and to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. Right? It starts with, I want to be better. I feel bad. I feel like I'm not good. I don't feel like I'm being who I should be. I want to be a better version of myself. The second tier is like, oh, being better requires me to analyze myself and my habits and behaviors and to correct them. And then the galaxy brain tier is to realize that at the end, this is my philosophy too. So I'm just going to say that this is what I believe. I'm not trying to force this down anybody's throat. At the end of all of your ambitions, at the end of all of the ego's desires, all the dreams you want to accomplish, all the sense pleasures you want to experience, all the traveling, all of the sex, all of the everything you want to experience, right? Let's say your ego finally is satisfied. All of your desires have been met. Everything you've ever wanted to do, all your dreams have been accomplished. Everything, you're at the end of it all, right? It's a silly thought experiment because human beings never get to that point. We don't live long enough to get to that point, to experience everything to the point where, like just like when you hear about vampires or immortality where people live forever and you're like, I don't know if I could be immortal because then I would experience everything and my family would die and everyone I love would die and I would just be bored, and only if I could choose when I would die would I want to be immortal. That kind of defeats the purpose of being immortal though. But anyway, the point is that you would literally have to be an immortal being in order to experience the full faculties and facets and everything that the human mind wants to experience in a youthful body, right? Because when you're young, when you're a child, you have different desires and ambitions and dreams than when you're a teenager, young adult, middle aged, elder, blah blah blah. You just, all stages in life you have different desires, ambitions, and my point is that the ego will always remain and cling to itself and try to attempt to have a concrete form in nature, even though you are constantly transmutating and just ambulating through changes throughout your entire life. You're just not aware of that because you're in the driver's seat. You're not seeing all the changes from the outside, and there's no definitive points, right? So my point is that if you were at the end of all ambition, I actually wrote up a little thing here. I want to read it. Sorry. Thought exercise. You've achieved all of the achievements and desires that the ego desires. All dreams fulfilled, all goals accomplished, all deeds done. What lies at the end of all of your ambitions once there are no desires and the ego is satisfied and the flames have been extinguished? Then you can simply just exist, right? This is kind of what the concept of enlightenment is in Buddhism, right? Where it's like this breakthrough to nirvana. But really all it is just that once you break through to nirvana, you realize, oh, things are a lot fucking simpler than I ever expected. But you can't just arrive there immediately. You have to go through this long, arduous journey and examine all of the facets and faculties of your suffering and experiences and the potentiality for experiences and possibilities that you could have that can inform your better decision, right? To elucidate any sort of path closer to enlightenment. But you can just simply exist, and existing is just fine, and you don't feel anxious like you have to do something, like you have to be somewhere, that you have to know these things, that you have to participate in X, Y, and Z, or that you have to make the world a better place, or you know what I mean? You can simply just exist, experience your life day by day, work on yourself day by day, contribute to your community day by day. And my point here is that once you hit that level where you're just like, all right, no ego, no desires, I can just simply exist. Have you ascended? Are you superior? Are you at a level of masters and gods and angels that is above all mortal beings and humans? No, you're a human being. You're not going to live forever, and you're not going to be able to experience all of the potential experiences that a human being could possibly have. You've examined your suffering, you've examined your ego, you've examined your desires, and you realize that there is an end to them all, right? So once you reach the end of all of those, you can just exist. But here's where my philosophy jumps in. But can you exist as a self-absorbed or self-centered or just a self-existing being? Or how can you just exist in any sort of selfish capacity, knowing you are where you want to be, or you have achieved the state of enlightenment, while others are suffering and struggling and dying and not anywhere close to where you are. That's the main struggle that Buddha had with the whole entire concept of Buddhism. Obviously, Buddhism didn't exist until after he died, but the concept of achieving nirvana and enlightenment, right, is that it's not a physical realm that you go to, or that's where you go after you die, or it's not heaven or anything. It's literally just a state of mind. It's a state of being that you can tap into. And that's the whole point of why Buddha was like, I need to tell people about this. It's not that it's like the only thing that, you know, that was his service, basically, is when you have no self to want to constantly cater to, you want to give unto others, right? You want to service others so that they may be helped and achieve that same level of freedom and liberation from the self and desires and ego that you have achieved, right? So I know how people could say that's a contradiction. Buddha may have achieved enlightenment, but he still felt the need and desire to want to teach people. That's still ego and desire, isn't it? That's the point. You're always going to exist as a human being. You're always going to have your ego, and you're always going to have desires. But if you know better, you can do better if you want to be better. When you've reached the end of all desires and achievements and ego forms, then you can just exist. But if you see that there are still others suffering and struggling and in adversity all around you, then how can you be at peace? That's my whole point. So in my opinion, I think that you can find purpose and meaning in life, true purpose and meaning, and not just the self-derived, ego-formed, desirous purpose and meaning for your specific, interaction in this life. But you can find purpose in life in general, and in the life of others, and in the life of humans, and in the life of nature, and just existing on this earth, by giving your time to helping people who are struggling and in need. I know that sounds like I'm preaching here, but think about it. Just think about it. When you're sad and beat and lonely and angry or miserable, or you feel like nobody's on your side, sometimes the best thing you can do is to find someone else who feels that way and try to lift them up, right? And I can't speak for other people, but I know for me personally, whenever I was just down, desperate, miserable, and I encountered a friend who was, I don't want to say worse than me because that's subjective, but in my head I could rationalize, oh, they feel worse than I do right now. Like they're crying, they're having a meltdown, this and that. It's easier for me to come up to them and give them advice and to help them and to make them the center of my attention. And maybe I talk the talk, but I don't walk the walk. But I'm giving advice, Maybe it's unsolicited advice, but it's still like care. It's coming from a place of concern and care, and I want that person to feel better because that means a lot to me that they feel better. And maybe that's a subconscious hang-up that I have where I can't feel good if other people feel bad. But in a way, it's like if I help you to feel better, it's going to help me feel better. And maybe I'm not addressing my immediate issues, but I'm pulling myself out of my introspective, just selfish, just fixation on all of my undesirable problems and state of being, right? So that's kind of what I mean, is that like you can lift up yourself by lifting up others. If you want to find any purpose or meaning in life, you can pursue art, you can pursue music, you can pursue politics, you can pursue philosophy, you can pursue power and strength and legacy and all of this. And ultimately, meaning does come from you, right? But like if you want to find something that is objectively like true, that the purpose of life is cooperation and community and taking care of each other in cooperation, basically, to have this cohesive, holistic system of the world taking care of each other and functioning as a natural ecosystem of balance, of ebb and flow, right? Of dharma, so to speak. Then yeah, that's the objective truth. That's the dharma of the purpose of life, is to live, exist, and to try not to contribute to the suffering of others. Try not to make your own hedonism the center of all of your ambitions and desires, but try not to contribute to the suffering of others. If you see others that are suffering, help them out so that everybody who is in your community is on an equal playing field. That there aren't people who are doing great and have the best mental health in the world and $1 billion, while there are people who are doing average and struggling to survive, and beneath them are people who are fucking doing very badly with their mental health and financial situation and are struggling and suffering and just in the mud. You know what I mean? That's the tier of the caste system that we have. We have the ultra rich and wealthy, and even they, with all of the access to capital and money and wealth and economic prosperity that they have, they're still human beings that are burdened by their ego and desires. And average, middle class, working class people, they are also struggling to try to make their world a little better. And the thing about it is, it's almost like standing on the shoulders of a drowning man to get out of the water and stop drowning yourself. Middle class people, we should all meet in the middle, frankly. There shouldn't be excessively wealthy or rich or people, and there also shouldn't be the conditions that contribute to poverty as well. But I think the middle class people find themselves in a precarious position where it's like, you want to get out of this, you want to get away from poverty, and you want to get closer to prosperity and abundance, but not excessively, right? But in so doing, you sometimes punch down and kick down on poor people because you don't relate to them anymore, because you've kind of, quote unquote, ascended beyond that surface level. And that beneath that surface level that you don't even want to acknowledge anymore is the dirty darkness, the the poor people, the crime, the gangs, and all this and that. It's like, we should all strive to be on an equal playing field, and it's called equanimity, right? But anyway, that's my point, is that if you can find purpose in life by giving your time to helping people in need. And I had a conversation with Connor about this recently, about mutual aid, and that the fact that it exists as a reaction to capitalism is kind of a sad thing, but at the same time, it is an absolute good, right? So it's like, we shouldn't, there shouldn't even have to be people in need. And that's where I find myself earlier, if we do a callback to earlier in this episode, should is always going to get you in this fantasy realm where you're going to feel this guilt and shame, and it really is kind of thought terminating in itself, right? The word should. Like, you should live in a world where we don't have to help, quote unquote, people in need because there shouldn't be people in need. Well, yeah, of course not. But how are we going to address the reality of the situation and these material conditions that we find ourselves in and that these people find themselves in, to the point where you can even experience such luxuries and privilege to educate yourself like I am, to get to the point where it's like, oh yeah, at the end of all philosophy and desire be, just, no more suffering, right? You can just be and exist. You can't just expect that of people who don't have the same access economic opportunities or capital or access to education or access to the internet or access to, you know what I mean? And are also living a very day-to-day struggle of a life, which absorbs all of their focus and attention and desires, and you know what I mean? So it's you can't compare. You cannot compare. Obviously, in this world, there shouldn't be poverty, but what does sitting here waxing and grandstanding and peacocking about this philosophy of the world should be a better place and we should try to create a better society, and how should we go about it? It's like, all right, we can sit here and talk about that. That's an important conversation to have, because it is true. The world should be a better place. There should not be poverty, and we need to figure out a way to make it better. But in the meantime, in the immediate moment, address those in need, right? That's what mutual aid does. It's like, capitalism is a great evil. Socialism is a great critique of this great evil that is just exploitative and resource driven and just infinite growth driven, which is just unsustainable for this planet. Socialism is a critique of it, which has obviously been propagandized to become this evil specter of darkness and basically all of the worst qualities of any sort of philosophical or economic system that you could possibly imagine, all in one. And then things emerge from the socialist reaction to capitalism, which is something like mutual aid. So yeah, on the one hand, if capitalism didn't exist, then socialism and communism wouldn't exist either. Therefore, mutual aid wouldn't exist, because we would live in a stateless, classless, cashless society, and we would all be equal, and there wouldn't be poverty or excessive wealth, right? That is the should world, the fantasy world that we live in. We don't live in that world. So if you want to find purpose in making, quote unquote, the world a better place, give your time to helping people in need, and do a little reality check. Who are the people in need in your immediate community that need the most help from you right here, right now? Where could your money or your volunteer time or your efforts and strengths go to help somebody here now? And it may seem moot and pointless, right? Because people are like, oh, if I give a homeless person a $20, what is that going to do to help them get them out of their situation? Or, that's not going to help them find a house, or they're just going to spend it on drugs or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but the point is that they need that now. They need food now. If they need drugs because they're addicted to drugs, they need that now to survive. And you can't comprehend that because you've never been in that position. You know what I mean? So you may find it pointless. It's like, well, what's $20 going to do to help that homeless person get a job and find a house and clean up and this and that? That's not the point. The point is the immediate need and mutual aid. Don't even think about what that person's going to do with the money once you give it to them, because it's not your fucking money anymore. That's their money, and that's their capital. That's their units and access to something they previously did not. And so if $20 is going to change the entire course of your day versus a person like myself, where I could spend $20 on a fucking pack of beer and, some snacks, and that's not going to really alter my entire day. If I spent $20, it's going to make my day a little more fun because I'm eating snacks and drinking beer. But if I had $0 to my name and I was given $20, that's my whole fucking day has been made. That's a game changer right there. You know what I mean? So it's difficult to compare, and it's difficult to put yourself in those positions to determine what it's like, being in that position if you're not even trying to, right? So that's where empathy is very important. But you can't have empathy for others if you don't try to have empathy for yourself, right? That's where, we start off with a know better, do better, be better. So let me go back to reading this. You can find purpose in life by giving your time to helping people in need. This undeniably makes you a force for good in the world. Unequivocally. And you can feel good by just existing and not having an end goal to achieve. You're already doing it. You've already done it. You've achieved it already. You've achieved your goal, and as long as you're consistent and you're constantly contributing, then you're good. You got nothing to feel guilty or shame or anxiety or worry or feel like, I'm not making my mark in this world. I'm not leaving a legacy behind. I'm not gaining capital and making my life easier. Don't worry about that shit, because guess what? Those are those perpetual worries that even if you get to a point of comfort based off of that worry, you're still going to have more worries that stack on top of that. It's like when rich people are like, oh, now I'm rich and I got a lot less to worry about. Well, now you got a lot more taxes to pay. You got a lot more, things to maintain. You got a larger property to manage. You got staff or something. You know what I mean? So it's like, just because you've ascended or achieved a certain level doesn't mean that there's not more arduous worries that are going to continue with it, right? Those are those perpetual worries. But the only thing you can do is try to stay on top of them too, which is the ultimate exhausting dance of capitalism. That's why rich people want to keep getting richer, because the richer you get, the less burdened you are by those obligations and those worries, that you can just defer them off to others with your units, your capital, your resources. You can say, oh, instead of cleaning my fucking house and having that be any worry that I ever worry about, that is a perpetual worry that never ends because the house is always going to get dirty, I'm just going to hire someone fucking else to do it. And then, out of sight, out of mind, I'm not even going to think of that person as a human being, because they're just another cog in the machine that maintains this equilibrium of this burdenless life that I live, right? Fuck, I keep getting off the rails. I'm so sorry. Now I'm starting to burn out a little bit, so it's harder to put a pin in shit. But yeah, it makes you a force for good in the world. You can feel good by existing and not having goals to constantly achieve, by not having capital to constantly accrue, by not having, worries, perpetual worries that you have to maintain and allow to make you anxious. Like, let's be honest, you're always going to have bills. You're always going to have, There's always going to be unexpected emergencies and stuff and contingencies that you have to plan ahead for and be prepared for. There's always going to be something that makes you worried, but you can choose like how much energy you put into those worries. And this is where it comes a little hypocritical from what I just said there. You can choose. A person in poverty is not always just going to be able to choose how anxious or worried they are about, getting food at the end of the day. They're just going to worry no matter what, right? But a rich person or a middle-class person can be privileged, like myself, enough to say, you can choose to, worry about shit or not, dude. You should be able to, right? In a perfect world, you should be able to. That's assuming that we all are on the same playing field here. We're not. We don't live in a utopian socialist society, so I can't say to a person who's experiencing poverty, you can worry, you can choose to worry, or you can, what am I trying to fucking say here? You can choose the amount or the level of worry that you have about fucking making money at the end of the month and paying your rent. And if you feed into it, then yeah, you're going to worry. And if you don't, then you're not going to worry about it. Just don't think about it. Don't worry about it, bro. The out of sight, out of mind kind of philosophy is inherently a privileged and rich one. And even a middle class one too, right? And it's not a realistic way of approaching it, right? So know better, do better, be better. That also, unfortunately, is highly dependent on your economic status in life. If you know better that, oh yeah, I'm in poverty, and you try to do better, okay, I'm going to try and get a job, but there's no fucking jobs out there to get, then how are you going to be better? Even if you know better and you do better, you're still stuck in that economic condition, and you still feel like shit, and you're still struggling and suffering, right? So it's kind of a fantastical hippie kind of ideology, like know better, do better, be better. This is just assuming that we do live in better socialist kind of a utopian world. And then I guess it kind of contradicts my idea at the end, where it's like, if you know better, do better, be better in a utopian society, then you've basically just hit enlightenment, and that's it. You can just exist, and you don't even have to worry about giving your time to others because there's suffering in the world. You could just simply exist. It's like a garden of earthly delights kind of situation where people are just walking around naked and just kind of looking at shit and doing whatever, and just kind of riding in a bubble up a tree, and looking at fish in the I don't know. I don't remember what the garden of earthly delights looks like to me. There's a lot of nuanced layers to this philosophy that I'm really butchering because I just sound like some fucking valley dork who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And I'll be the first to admit I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. And also, this did not turn into a little bite at all. This turned into an hour-long podcast. What the fuck? And I'm not going to edit any of this probably. So I'm just going to wrap up my spiel, know better, do better, be better. And I'll give you an idea of stuff that I wanted to do with Kali B Podcast, which was the whole point of why I was going to record this. And then I will end the pod for some other topic, probably with better structure next time. So let me just finish reading this. We'll get to the end of that. If you know better, if you don't know better, you can't do better, you won't be better. If you know better, but don't do better, you won't be better. If you know better, you can do better on your way to being better. You already are better. There's no need to want to be a better person when you know best what to do with your life. All you have to do now is figure out what you should know better to do. Hint, to give without expecting to be given to in return. Reciprocation. That's an important thing. When it comes to, selfless giving, is understanding reciprocation and not desiring reciprocation, right? So let me continue. At the end of all ambitions and ego and its desires, give to those in need. To know better is to do better, is to be better. That's all I was trying to say. And I want to elaborate that even further. If I could, I'm going to write about that, and then come back with a more coherent approach to that ideology I'm trying to work on here. Anyway, so let's get back to the Kali B Podcast, and then we'll wrap this up. So, words of encouragement and self-affirmations was that entire segment turned into like a half-hour-long segment. I don't know if I'll be doing that every time. Maybe I'll just do some fucking mindless platitudes instead of going off on this philosophy episode like I did today. Or maybe I'll just skip it altogether, right? Maybe I'll just make specific episodes about words of encouragement and self-affirmations and what I think about it. I don't know. Still figuring shit out, by the way. If you haven't come to that conclusion, I'm still figuring out what the fuck I'm doing with this format here. I was also thinking of doing a question of the day, but I don't know, dude. I don't know. Like, it's just engagement. I'm trying to farm engagement. Let's be honest here. It's not clickbait. It's not rage bait. It's just engagement baiting. Another thing would be to do a name of the day, because I used to text my buddies all the time. I'd be like, yo, today my name is, I remember a hurricane was going on. I texted all my buddies. I was like, yo, today, during the hurricane, my name is Cyber Wasp. And I fucking love that shit. I'll read a couple ideas on here. I don't want to give the whole game away. We got Larry Ballheaves, Brick Hasselhoff, Aaron Grundle. I'd be like, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Call of Duty podcast. My name today is Cosmo Calamatos, or Walla Wallaby, or Future Alien Exquisite Sexual Love, or the Fumbling Jumbler, Doof Goofins, or the Flayed Goat, Shawarma Money, I'm actually reading like all of these now. Beef Hole, Richard P. Nile, like Dick P. Nile, I think that was the joke. Boris Taurus. I like that one. Beef MILF. Dude, yeah. Beef MILF. That's the one. Hey, Albert Balls. Hey, yo, my name is Sludge McCluskey. So that's fun. That's definitely something I could keep writing a million things. And then so I have a made-up word of the day, too. I'll read you a couple of those. I have flungulate, Axorbian, Abraxacadaxis, can't even pronounce that, Schuper, Glippery, we got Orglor, we got Borzaquil, Hepogep, Pizzology, the study of pizza, Mesmerite. I've got Alba Baldrius. Fuck, that's like I'm writing for my fantasy language. I've got Grotamulent, Quintabulon. That's a favorite of mine. Zephyrnefer. And just to give you a final one, we have Gravioli. Gravioli is a good one. Munkawink, Schlock, Gornstez, Sequesius. Oh, wow, that's a good one. And final one, Karaya. Okay, so what else? And then I would ask you at the end of it, like, what do you think that could mean? And then I would either make up a definition or ask you to make up a definition. And then I would do an outro spiel, series ideas that I wanted to go through. Besides, doing like an interview, obviously I want to do that, where you do like just asking people questions and just having a conversation. I wanted to do a series which is like a Wiki Baba through the Dream Portal, which is where I like just go through fucking random Wikipedia pages to find interesting things to talk about. And at the very least, you would learn something. So it'd be kind of pseudo-educational. What I'm really excited to do is something called Zen Gardens, which is kind of a Buddhism and Eastern philosophy kind of ASMR reading in like a soft voice. It's not specifically ASMR, but it would be like I'd be reading them in a very meditative and calm voice that emphasizes enunciation. That's what I was trying to read. Profound works in a sleepy voice. That's what it says here. Another one's going to be let's make stuff up. Let's make up stuff. I don't know how you. What's the grammar? What's the correct way to do that? Names for a new color. Make up names for new things. Who cares? I don't know. There's going to be another series called Let's Freaking Rock: The History of Rock and Roll. I don't know. These are pending ideas. Let's Write Junk is actually one I really want to do. So where you come up with comedy horror movie ideas, and I have a ton. I'm not going to read through them right now because it's just be a 2-hour podcast. Horror movie ideas. Write some junk music or fun, stupid music, or write a fantasy story like hobbits and goblins and shit. I don't know. Just make stuff up. Just make shit up. One I was going to do is a history series called Historical History, and it goes through a lot of stuff. History by year, history of the 21st century, history of political ideologies, history of Cuba and Latin and Caribbean countries, history of Florida, just stuff that's like relevant to me that I care about, and then we'll branch off from there. The other one's another series was called Games That Changed My Life, that I grew up with, obviously, and Shows That Changed My Life. This is just to kind of cut into the serious nature of the podcast sometimes, where I just talk about fun things, things that don't require 100% brain power. And so I'm not going to get too deep into the segments that I have planned, but just to give you one giant one, there's one called Chef Baba Get in My Belly, or Food Around the World, or Weird Foods. So Get in My Belly is basically just talking about food and nutrition and, history of beer, cooking food from scratch, different ways of cooking, and talking about like a chef run I did on Skyrim, or, stuff like that, just goofy stuff. Anything that has to do with food or nutrition or consumption of food, or even our societal, view of food and cultural views of food and whatever. The Food Around the World series was just going to like emphasize different nations and, countries and cultures of their food styles and what they deem to be acceptable and don't. For example, like in a lot of Southeast Asian countries, they are totally, nobody will blink an eye about eating a cricket on a street stand or something like that, right? But in the United States, they'd be like, "Oh my God, I can't eat a cockroach." Don't get me wrong. Fuck, I don't know why I said cockroach. Fuck that. Oh God, Jesus Christ. But yeah, it's like, hey man, you gotta get protein where you can somewhere. It's nutritious. You put a little bit of seasoning on it. It's just like eating meat. You're not gonna eat meat raw. And those who do are psychopaths. The reason why you cook and put seasoning on meat is to make it taste better. It's the same thing with anyway. Weird food series is where I would be talking about like just some wild ass shit, like the balut egg, or Rocky Mountain oysters, or durian fruit, or like brain tofu, or some shit, or here's this fucking hilarious one. This is going to be in episode 1 of that series, called Tong Zi Dan, which is Chinese virgin boy piss eggs, which is an insane thing to say out loud, but all it does is pique my interest. I need to know more. Not because I want to know about virgin piss boys or whatever, but like, what the fuck is that, and why is it a delicacy, and what the fuck did I just read? I have to know more, And so that's all I got for you right now. I got a ton of other shit, but I think this has gone on too long. And, it just kind of turned into a philosophy episode by accident. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and edit this. And thanks for listening. If you're listening, I'm going to do a quick plug. Listen to the podcast that I'm starting with my buddy Connor, Chuff Chat Pod. You can find us at Chuff Chat Pod on Instagram. And you can also find us at youtube.com/Chuff Chat. I think it's just Chuff Chat. I may change it to Chuff Chat Pod. But for now, it's Chuff Chat. CHUFF. Chat. As far as my socials, I don't want to give you those because I'm not trying to have you follow my personal Instagrams. You can follow my band Instagram if you're interested. My buddy Crispy and I, longtime best friend as well, started a band earlier this year called Mega Money Powerball. We're about to play our first show on March 22nd. And we're going to put out a demo. We got a bunch of stickers and cards and CDs and buttons and all that stuff that we're going to be working on. And you can follow us if you like kind of crusty, old school, borderline hardcore, but with like a lot less breakdowns and like tough guy beatdown shit. It's kind of hardcore punk adjacent, but it's also, and it's not really like a parody or comedy band, but we're also not taking ourselves super seriously. But instead of being on a soapbox or preaching to the choir about we should all be better, Trump is evil, and blah blah blah, it's more like, hey guys, I could sit here just like every other punk band and tell you fuck Trump, fuck Nazis, punch your local Nazi type shit. You're gonna hear that no matter what. I'm not trying to take away from that. All I'm trying to, my message to everybody would be mutual aid. Go fucking join Food Not Bombs. Go help out with your local community if you want to make a difference. That's the only way you're going to make a true, real difference right here, right now, other than, your social media posts and phoning a representative. And, I know the motherfuckers I know in my friends group are not going to go take time off work to go storm no fucking Capitol. So, but my point is, it's just mutual aid. Throw us a little bit of cash for our merch and to keep us making merch and to maybe help us go on tour. Well, we're not doing this for money. We're doing this for fun. And if we have a message we want to tell people, it's to get involved in mutual aid and to talk to us if you have questions about that. That's all. That's my whole purpose of Mega Money. Because Connor and I remember a long time ago, we were like, oh yeah, I just want to be a musician to make just enough money to not have to work a 9 to 5. And that kind of takes away from the art and the sincerity of making music. Is if that is the essence and the ambition is to make money and to get out of your 9 to 5 and turn it into a business and turn it into a job. I don't think that's ever going to happen with Mega Money. Not to like be down on myself and say like, oh, we're not going to make it, so whatever. But it's really like, that's not the point. If I'm sitting here trying to make money off of Mega Money Powerball, that kind of defeats the purpose of Mega Money Powerball, which is to make fun of money fetish capitalists, people who are like obsessed with making money and do everything for the sake of making money. And I'm kind of a hypocrite if I kind of do the same thing. So it's like, yeah, everybody needs money. We live in capitalism. Obviously, you're going to have needs that require capital and units of currency to pay for. But ultimately, if you want to contribute to us because you like it, throw us some money. If you want to, if you want to put your money where it's better needed and suited, then donate some time to mutual aid. You don't even have to spend money. You just donate yourself. Donate your time. So anyway, that's at Mega Money Powerball on Instagram. If you want to find music, we don't have anything posted yet, but you can go to unitxrex.bandcamp.com. That's the word unit, UNIT, the letter X, and RECS, as in records. It's a pseudo little record label bullshit that I made to put all these other bands and stuff that I have that practice out of the storage unit. But yeah, Unit X Rex is our little label and what we call the storage unit. And that's where I'm going to be posting all of the Mega Money music as well as my other bands with people there. So yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead, fucking like, subscribe. You don't have to. I don't give a flying shit if you do or not. This YouTube channel, I'm not going to monetize it. And if I do monetize it, I'm not going to look at it. And it doesn't matter to me. Like, that's my point. Is my ambitions for doing shit is not driven by the need to seek profits, so to speak. You know what I mean? I'm not, even if I wanted to be a good capitalist, I would be a shitty capitalist, because I'm just so ADHD. I'm lazy. I'm forgetful. And I'm just tangential. One thing takes my attention away. Next week, it's a completely different thing. I hyper-focus and fixate on weird shit all the time. I can't just sit here and be like, I gotta make money. Everything I do is money. It's the same thing with, like, trying to have sex all the time. It's like, having sex is great. Having money is great. If it's the only thing that I think about and do all the time, I'm just gonna be fucking crazy. I just wouldn't be good at it. That's my whole point. Anyway, you guys, I'm gonna find some outro music. Like, subscribe if you want. Don't give a fuck. Don't give a fuck. And if you do, cool. Can't wait for you to see and hear the next episode. And if you don't, fuck you. How about that? Where do you get an influencer going on here telling people who are listening to fuck themselves? You don't like what I just said in the past hour and a half? Go fucking fuck yourself. No, I'm just kidding. I love most people. There are people out there in this world that are straight up objectively evil and do not deserve love. I'm not going to mince words about that. That's a fucking fact. You want to fight me about that all day? Fuck you. Okay? Fuck you. All right, I'm going to try and find like a reggae outro because that's just where we're going with this week. So anyway, I'll see you all soon. I'm going to start creating a more consistent, regular schedule for research and, cultivation of concepts and ideas and things I want to talk about. And then the actual recording day. And then I'll basically announce when my official posting day will be. For Chuff, we're going to try to make those Thursday, and I don't want to jock the swag of Chuff Chat, so I'm thinking I might put it on like a fucking Sunday or something. I don't know. Just some weird day. Just some random weird day that doesn't interact with my band practices, my weekly work life or whatever, and also doesn't interfere with Chuff Chat. So I think Sunday might be the best. So keep an eye out, and Kali B out. Okay? Peace.
in my hand, make you understand me again, man. What you don't know, say later will be greater.